How are you?
Great, I'm doing good today. It's a interesting start to the week because I live out here in Long Beach, and last night a full day of peaceful protests turned into looting from outsiders last night, and I'm very involved with our Chamber of Commerce down here in Long Beach. So it's an interesting and emotional Monday, but I am good. Our team is all good and safe and healthy, so thankful for those things.
How badly were you affected by COVID, and then with this new let's say situation now? How are you coping up with all the new changes?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like our day-to-day team, we're a group of, young tech people. And when COVID hit, our office in Long Beach is actually right on the main strip of the area that the protests were being held, and then that got destroyed by looters late at night. They were totally independent from one another though. But our office is on the third floor. So as far as we know, we're good, but we haven't been in our office for about 3 months because of COVID. And our lead developer, he's a young, very, very smart, very bright and talented guy. And he lives with his grandma. He chose to keep her company because his grandfather passed away and he didn't want her to be alone. So we made a promise with him that our daily team of 5 would each follow strict social distancing measures, keep ourselves safe, so that he can continue to meet up with us as we do a couple times a week and keep his grandma safe. So, it's been an adjustment period as a whole, but, we're evolving. We actually, as a business, we pivoted into providing telehealth services. So while some people have a lot of extra downtime right now, maybe not the same hours that they were putting in before, we're even more than we were before. So it's an emotional time and it's an exciting time. It's also, there's such a broad spectrum of what's going on, but we're trying to stay positive, and being able to help people through telehealth with VR is really, really rewarding. We're just starting to see that take traction. So we're trying to do our best to make good right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Where are you based?
We're based in Belgium,
Okay.
center of Europe, and we are also, let's say, one of those countries who are badly affected by the COVID.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would say that we are getting back to somewhat of a normal situation, because the schools and let's say the regular businesses are going to open from this month. However, it's a new normal, and we need to get used to it. People are skeptical about seeing each other, still trying to maintain the social distance, and somewhat, it is somewhat a new normal, I would say, so. Mm-hmm. That's where we are at, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was sort of, curious about your own background, because when I look at your company, and then I wanted to sort of, understand what is that you saw, as far as the opportunity was concerned, before starting Mieron VR. Can you sort of, dive into that particular spectrum?
Yes, definitely. So my partner and co-founder in Mieron, Josh Dubon, him and I had been working in virtual reality for quite a few years before we started Mieron. Before this, we had an award-winning creative agency that has worked with Fortune 500 companies around the world, like Snap, ESPN, X Games, Rolling Stone magazine. So when virtual reality first started gaining a little bit more attention again, we dove right into it. We started engineering hardware. We started creating ways to stitch footage together before there was automatic programs that could do it for you. And we made some really cool VR activations. We had done a Black Friday experience, a doorbuster experience, so that the first 100 people in line at Tilly's, which is like a big chain of stores out here in the States. The first 100 people in line at 100 Tillies across the US would get a cardboard headset and be able to see the VR experience that was like this Black Friday time traveler, and he brought you through the deals in fun ways. We had created VR experiences that were ancillary content for TV shows and movies, and we really saw that entertainment was a great way to use VR, but there was so much power behind this technology. We were seeking ways to do more with it. So we did some training exercises. VR is really amazing for high risk, low frequency scenarios as ways to practice and gain confidence. So we had been doing quite a few different applications in VR. One that we did was with this fine artist. He used to be a street artist turned fine artist. His name is Greg Crayola Simpkins. And we did a project with him, and it was a narrative art VR piece where he's putting up a mural in Long Beach, and he's talking about the inspiration for his art, how he's come to be in the place that he is, and basically his journey. And we combined a lot of different types of VR filmmaking in that experience. We had tracking without seeing any tracking devices. We had animations in the filmed VR content. And at that time, the experience got a lot of accolades, a lot of recognition. And Greg ended up calling us about 6 months after the VR experience released and told us that his niece, who was in California, had been doing a back bend in her living room and had a spinal stroke. Just a freak accident. While she was doing her back bend at 5 years old, all of a sudden became paralyzed from the waist down. And her family had uprooted from California to go to Baltimore to go to an intensive spinal cord injury recovery program. Then they moved to Kentucky to attend another program there. And their life just turned into caring for their daughter, Eden, as a 5-year-old with a spinal cord injury. How do you live life from there? So Eden had seen the VR experience with her Uncle Greg and kept talking to her parents saying, remember when we were back in LA with Uncle Greg and we did that mural with him? And they were like, no, Eden, you watched it in VR. And she would get so mad. She was so convinced that she was back there with him that her parents were like, okay, there's something going on here. Like, she's tricked. Now we know from scientific research that you can basically like implant new memories with VR. You can kind of inception people with, which is a little bit scary, but you know, we're using VR for good. Mm-hmm. And so Josh and I were like, they called us and they said, our daughter is tricked. You know, there's something here. We're doing everything we can to help her. Would you be interested in coming out and seeing if there's anything that you can do? So we were like, absolutely. We flew out to Kentucky. We spent about 2.5 weeks out there because Eden's parents kept saying, you know, if life were just about Eden being able to walk again, it would be so easy. There's so much more to a spinal cord injury and to long-term rehab that you just don't realize, you don't know. So every day before school, Eden does 2 hours of rehabilitation. So we went with her every day for the 2 hours before school. After school, then she goes to school, does a normal school day. She comes home, then she has more activities that she has to do for her wellness, her homework, adaptive sports, and, you know, trying to live the regular life of an elementary school student. So we saw in the time that we were at rehab, what are the principles that the doctors and physical therapists are doing? What's the desired outcome and what's the secondary outcome? And we took all of that initial information and created a library of VR experiences that are designed to help with those specific principles in mind. So we have gait training experiences for walking again and for getting neuromuscular connections reformed. We have upper body movement, lower body exercises. We have core and trunk stability exercises. And we quickly realized that, you know, there's so much to a spinal cord injury. How do you grow into an adult body when your muscles that help grow your bones are paralyzed? How do you, decrease the risk of secondary injury? How do you make sure that you can bear weight on your bones so that they don't start to disintegrate and crack and become brittle? So we put as much as we could into the library and decided to make it as accessible as possible for all levels of mobility. And since then, that was 3 years ago, it's translated to helping people recover from stroke, MS, Parkinson's, brain injuries, all different types of musculoskeletal disorders. And the name Mieron comes from the two words, mirror neurons. So that's our goal, is to trick the brain into firing new nerve pathways by recognizing patterns, because that's what mirror neurons do. So the best way to explain mirror neurons is if you see someone throwing a ball to a catcher over and over and over again, eventually your eyes go to the catcher's mitt before the ball gets there, because your brain knows the pattern and it knows the outcome of the pattern. So that's our goal, and our premise is to help trick the brain into firing new nerve pathways. But even if that doesn't happen for everyone, because each person is different and we're very sensitive about what we claim and what we tell people we can do, because everyone has a different reaction to VR. And everyone has a different reaction to rehab. Everyone has a different reaction to wellness exercises. But at the end of the day, we have a very comprehensive library that has pain management, mental wellness, physical therapy, occupational therapy, gait training, and the library continues to grow.
Right. And in order to grow the library, right, you must have some source where you need to constantly adapt with the new data that comes in. So how do you keep up with that?
Yeah, so we do all of our development in-house. That's one of the very unique things about Mieron, is that we have a team here that we collaborate all together and we build the experiences together. And our team not only includes me and Josh as co-founders, and our developers, our software engineers, but also medical professionals that collaborate with us. So hospitals and rehab centers around the world that use Mieron, they'll send us an email, or they'll fill out the surveys that we send out, and they'll tell us, hey, we have this patient type. It would be great to have an exercise that works on these parameters. This is an idea we have. Can you build it? So instead of them having to dish out top dollar to get a custom VR experience, we use those adaptations, we build them, we put it into the general library, and everyone gets the update.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, no matter, let's say, whatever the situation is, as far as the recipient is concerned, they can play with different libraries that are available, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's like gamified exercise and rehab. So you may not realize that you're doing these cross-body movements and lateral reach and weight shifting, but you are. And then one of the great things, and one of the immediate things that we saw with Eden when we first went out there, is the ability to reduce pain perception. So when you're in VR, your pain perception is reduced by like 90%, because there's such a flood of sensory input coming into your system that your brain has to decide what it's going to process first. So pain perception pretty much goes to the back burner. And we saw this with Eden when we first went out there, because we didn't have any therapeutic VR experiences at that point. We were exploring this genre of VR, this world, entering the medical field. And I have a background in medical research and in bone growth mechanisms, but coming from the creative side, this was a different pivot of what you could do with VR. So we had an experience that we had done with Vans of Christian Hosoi, who's this legendary skateboarder in California, him skateboarding in one of the swimming pools at Vans. And we put that on Eden as just an initial trial when we went out there. Like, can she wear it? Is she going to get dizzy? Will the headset fit? And she made her own game about it. She was in this assisted crawling exercise where somebody holds her hips and she's supposed to try to keep her core engaged and pull her knees forward. And usually it's very painful. It's annoying for her. She doesn't want to look like a baby, because if 5-year-olds, they're all about being a big kid now, and crawling is for babies, in their mind. And so she was like, doing her assisted crawling exercise, and she was trying to take Christian's skateboard away from him in the VR experience. And she's crawling, laughing, having fun. And Josh and I are like, okay, cool. She can wear the headset. She likes it. She's having a good time. The doctors and her parents pulled us aside, and they were like, this is the analytics of what we're seeing. She's not complaining about the pain. Her happiness is through the roof. Her mental wellness is higher than it's usually during this exercise, and she's exerting herself for longer with a higher intensity. So she's getting more reps and she's doing the exercise for longer. That was really our aha moment where we were like, okay, we need to make a whole library to tackle everything that they could use with this technology that's possible. You know, just a glimpse of something that wasn't related and how it was able to help her with those elements of rehab and the mental wellness and the pain management. That's when we really saw the opportunity there.
Okay. And how is Eden doing now?
Eden is amazing. So this weekend, her mom on Instagram, we're allowed to speak openly about her. Her Instagram is Stand for Eden. Mm-hmm. And this weekend, her mom posted a picture of Eden riding on horseback. And maybe because everything's so emotional here right now with the Black Lives Matter movement coming up again and COVID and everything that's going on, but I was like brought to tears by seeing Eden on a horseback, because when we met her 3 years ago, she couldn't sit upright on a couch. You have to engage so many muscles in order to just sit upright, muscles that you and I don't even think about using, that we don't even know that we're activating. Eden has to conscientiously engage and think about those muscle groups to sit upright. So when we first met her, she couldn't sit on a sofa. She would just topple over. To see her riding on horseback means that she's gained so much core strength, so much control, so much things that she's put into patterns that her body has again taken over for her so that she can ride on a moving animal and be seated upright. So it's really amazing to see the progress that Eden makes, and her family is such an incredible support system behind her. They'll try everything and commit to using technology and to going to rehab and putting in the time and hard work for her to recover.
Wow. I was just quickly going into the Instagram if when you said Stand for Eden, and I'm just actually going through the horse riding picture as well. So it's quite interesting story that you just said. What other stories that you have similar to Eden that you've managed to work with VR?
Yeah, so we have quite a few, and we love hearing the stories. Some of them, Mieron's in about 7 countries around the world right now in different hospitals and rehab centers in those countries. And so HIPAA protects a lot of what does go on. But at the private rehab centers, they share a lot more with us, which is great, because that's how we learn. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking for success stories. We're always looking to evolve our product. One of my favorite ones that we have is this gentleman that is recovering from a stroke. And we were at the facility that he attends up in Northern California. And he's about 70 years old. So he's not really into video games. He's not into new technology. When you're that age, you're not on cruise control, but you are doing things traditionally. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't want to try VR. His practitioners had been pushing him to try it. And we were up there for an in-service just to check on them, see how their equipment was going. We had another appointment up in the area, so we always stop in and, at least stay for an hour. And this guy came in and he was pissed off. He was like, I can't turn the steering wheel anymore. I can't lift my arm above shoulder level. It's getting worse. How am I going to get groceries? How am I going to come here? How am I going to do anything if I can't drive? And they're like, all right, you need to try Mieron today. Like, Jess and Josh are here. Give it a try. And he's like, I hate video games. So we're like, it's not video games. It's not frustrating. There's no negative elements. You can't die in it. There's no blockades. Everything's positive reinforcement. So he's like, fine, I'll try it. He tries it. And we have him in this target exercise where, you have to reach and pop these different colored targets that are coming towards you. And he's like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not going to be able to do it unless they're this far below. And we're like, that's okay. It's built for all levels of mobility. So eventually the targets will enter your range of motion. So he puts the headset on, and all of a sudden he's overhead, popping all these targets above his head, and his arm is waving back and forth. And Josh and I look at each other and we're like, wait, we thought that he couldn't do that. And his practitioner is nudging us like, shh, 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 and taking a video of him. And so, he does the 3-minute experience. He takes the headset off and he's like, man, I'm so sore back here. Why am I sore in this area? I never feel sore there. And they're like, that's because you don't use those muscles anymore. They've been atrophying. And he's like, what do you mean I don't use them anymore? And they're like, you were using those muscles the whole time. Hey, look at this. You were above head the whole time. He's like, impossible. He looks at the video and he was brought to tears. He said, I can move my body that way. So it was so powerful to see. Not only was he able to do something that he didn't think that he can do, but once his self-imposed limitations were visually taken away from him, he couldn't see his body in physical space anymore. So his brain couldn't tell him, his consciousness couldn't tell him, hey, you can't do that, and stop him from before even trying. It's amazing how powerful your brain is. So the fact that his self-imposed limitations were gone and his pain perception was lowered meant that he was able to achieve so much more than he even believed was possible for himself. So that changed his entire outlook on rehab from that point forward.
Mm-hmm. So when you are into this sort of, success, when you see that kind of success, and then you also see perhaps not so much success in some cases, how do you see that? Where do you see the difference there? Like why certain things works on some people versus why certain thing doesn't work on some people? What can be your core reasons there?
I think a lot of it has to come with mindset, because there's so many things that go into when somebody is put in the position that they are attending rehab. They've probably been in a life-changing accident, and everyday life as they know it is forever or for the long term changed. Just like how we're all living with this new normal of COVID. Imagine living with a new normal where you can no longer wake up and dress yourself as an adult. So there's depression that plays into it. There's anxiety. There's, people that are competitive. A lot of young people that we see get spinal cord injuries. Like the leading age of spinal cord injuries is a male that's like in their 20s or 30s because they're either mountain biking, snowboarding, doing some sort of action sports or activity that resulted in an injury. So how do you go from being this active person to someone that requires so much help in order to get through each day? So I think mindset has a big part to do with it, because there is so much that you can do to help your body adapt, adjust, and recover. And it's just about finding the right people. Like just like how, some elementary school teachers really have a way of inspiring students to, explore STEM and science and math, and some elementary school teachers are really not efficient and not effective in inspiring people to learn. It's the same thing with rehab. So we've really built Mieron to be a tool that can help with the pain management aspect and can help motivate people to have fun doing their rehab. Another example that I can share that plays into the question that you asked is this 17-year-old that he had been injured in a bicycle accident. And so this individual, he was participating in a velodrome race. He got knocked off of his bike and was injured and ended up being a quadriplegic at 17 years old. And so right at the peak of, I'm an adult, I'm independent, you're moving out of your parents' house at that point possibly, and you have your whole life ahead of you, all of a sudden he can't get out of bed on his own, he can't get dressed, he can't brush his teeth. And he requires, 24-hour care, even in his home. So he was depressed, and he was going into his private facility, Next Step LA. They're close to us out here. And he had been going 3 times a week. They specialize in spinal cord injury, activity-based training for recovery. And so, he was going 3 times a week. And at first he thought that he was going to see all these gains, and he gave himself ambitious goals. And sometimes your body doesn't move as fast as you want it to. And so he saw other people that were achieving more than him. He saw people that were reaching the goals that he wanted to reach, and he wasn't there yet. So his depression took over, and he stopped coming 3 times a week and only was coming once a week. Well, if you're not going to the gym or to rehab or to anywhere as often, then you're not going to see the same results. So then he really started to decline. And he tried Mieron while we were in there visiting, and he's like, man, usually when I feel the burn, I know like I activated that muscle group, and okay, good job, you activated the muscle group, it hurts, time to move on. He doesn't really push through the burn. But when he's in Mieron, he wants to finish that 3 or 5 minute experience. He wants to get a higher score than last time. He wants to challenge his friends at Rehab to try to beat his score. So it's provided a really motivating factor for him to go back to Rehab and to push himself. And so he told us when he's in Mieron, when he feels the burn, he doesn't even actually really feel it. He's so focused on his score and on what he's doing in the VR environment that he just wants to finish the experience. He's not even thinking of it as being hard exercise. Now, a couple months later, we go back in and he's like, Josh, Jess, I couldn't wait to see you guys. I can put a shirt on for myself again. And it's like, that is a huge milestone. And Mieron is not the only reason that he was able to achieve that, but it was a big motivator for him to have fun at Rehab, to get going back to Rehab more frequently, to put in harder work and more reps when he's there, even without realizing it because he's having fun doing it. And that translated into functional movement that's helping him be more independent.
If I understood correctly, there's a big part of Viveron with the motivation aspect, right? If we have to sum it up, then of course there's a training aspect, there's a routine, and there's exercise schedules, and all those things perhaps is included there. But the most important aspect perhaps is the motivation part, right?
Yeah. You know, for me, it's hard to say what is the most important because it affects everyone differently. But I think across the board, it does have such a strong motivating factor that is one of the big things about it. And right now, with everything going on, we actually just introduced an additional wellness program into the Mieron library. It's called Well in 20. It's a 20-day program that's like guided mindfulness, guided mindset, helping people create small goals to be larger goals, and just providing an outlet for people to have those 5 minutes of reflection and positivity each day.
Okay, nice. So based on what's happening right now, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of adaptation that's required for Viveron to do. What sort of adaptation that you're doing as far as your service offering is concerned?
Yeah, so when Mieron first started, we had a product exclusively for healthcare providers. Right at the end of last year, we just released our consumer product because it's been in such high demand. People, you know, here in the States with health insurance, you get like 8 weeks of insurance covered rehab, and then what? So we had so many people telling us, my rehab is over, insurance isn't covering it anymore, but if I don't do exercise, I'm going to lose all my gains. I'd love to be able to use Mieron at home. So at the end of last year, we released a home product. And in January, we actually won an Innovative Tech Award from CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, based upon our home product helping people with disabilities and the elderly. And so when COVID hit, you know, it really changed the entire atmosphere, not just for business and for socializing, but also for healthcare. Because if you have something that puts you into outpatient rehab, you have a compromised immune system. You know, if you have a brain injury, you have a compromised immune system. And so we were, you know, thinking, okay, if, you know, we have our home product, but a lot of people are also out of work. So they may not be able to make that investment right now. And the US, as a response to COVID, extremely expanded telehealth. So which services that are eligible for telehealth that a doctor can provide, you know, with, you know, over Skype or FaceTime or Zoom, all of those platforms you never used to be able to use for telehealth because they're not secure. So because of the health crisis that we're facing, the government announced that not only can you get about 85 new telehealth eligible services, but also you can basically use any platform that you can to receive them. So Mieron, when we were looking at the announcements, we realized, hey, we can help treat at least 55 of these 85 new telehealth eligible codes. So we've been collaborating with hospitals and healthcare providers to use Mieron as a tool that people can get more engaged with their telehealth outcomes and removed from the home setting a little bit. Because, you know, talking to your practitioner, you're used to going into this hands-on treatment, and now what? They're going to have you use your dining room chair instead of having, you know, an entire facility around you. It's not the same. So we have hospitals that are giving out or not giving out. They're basically, how do I phrase this properly? The hospitals are sending out headsets to their patients and assigning homework or doing telehealth while their patient wears the VR headset. They can watch in real time through the computer. So that's been the biggest pivot that we've made as a result of COVID, is really entering that telehealth scene to make sure that people don't fall off of their rehab, don't lose the gains that they've already gotten, and stay engaged with their practitioners in fun and new ways.
What kind of challenge that you have within the industry now, as you are growing, right? Like you have some clients, you have some insight now as far as the industry is concerned. Now there must be something that is still bothering you as far as your growth, and what kind of challenge that you see going forward for Viveron?
Yeah, so we are a startup, so we do have different challenges. Right now, we have an open seed round of funding, and we have met our minimum to close. We have investors that love our mission, love our company, love our team, but with COVID, we're still looking for active investors. So it's different, definitely from a startup perspective, a different climate to be raising capital during. As far as the technology and some of the challenges that we face, we're on the software side of things. So even though technology is rapidly changing in VR, we're very fortunate that the largest hardware manufacturers have approached us and have made partnerships with us so that we can have the next generation hardware and develop for it before it hits the market, which is great for us, so that we're always like a step ahead of where the VR technology is going. But I'd say one of the biggest challenges that we have right now is education and outreach, because so many people still haven't tried VR, or maybe they tried it back through a Google Cardboard headset, and they probably didn't have the most immersive or best experience with those, just based on what was available. So we always really thrive at trade shows and industry events, being able to put people in the headset, show them what it's all about, give them ideas on how they can use it as a patient or how they can use it as a practitioner. But right now, all of the trade shows and industry events are postponed for the foreseeable future. So we're finding new ways to really be able to show people the power of Mieron and convey that message digitally.
And when you mentioned about the hardware, right? You got the let's say you have a good partnership with the hardware manufacturer, but when it comes to software, there must be still a challenge, because there's this let's say finite amount of funding that's necessary in order to run your business. Mm-hmm. So how do you see this evolutions of Mieron from let's say from now to a year from now, and also beyond that?
So our forecast for the next year is still extremely strong. COVID changed what we expect, but in a way for the better, because we've done the hard work for a lot of the hospitals in creating these waivers that they have to submit to the government in order to do the new telehealth services. So we're really partnering with hospitals and trying to go above and beyond to take some of their workload away, so that they can use a new technology and really have an opportunity to evolve telehealth, because telehealth hasn't had an opportunity to change basically since it was invented. And now that so many people are going to need it, it's a really great opportunity to make telehealth extremely more effective and protect the people that really need to use it from coming in and getting exposed to more germs or to COVID, or, risking being in the hospital because of going to rehab. So there is that, that gloom in the air that COVID is, destroying the economy and everything is shut down. But we really see it as a challenge to step up to the plate to change a system that hasn't really been brought up to date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, like you discussed about all the different, let's say, wonderful stories that you could share. And if you think about the technological advancement that's still necessary in order to cater perhaps a larger audience, How do you see your evolutions there? Like, what kind of skill that you need to sort of, go for before you are able to cater a larger audience, if you are to sort of, do that?
Yeah, so we've basically followed this strategy kind of from day one, is that if we can build a product that gets validity from the medical field, from doctors and practitioners themselves, then we can branch off into offering it directly to people. So we're still following that same guiding principle, that we want it to be an effective tool, that we want it to be something that's more than just fun and games at the end of the day. And so we are basically still working with those healthcare providers and making sure that they have access to Mieron so that people can try it, use it, benefit from it, and then basically also approach those people when their insurance no longer covers rehab, and make sure that we're giving them a tool that can help them still maintain their gains and achieve their next goals down the line. So we're not trying to spread ourselves too thin and tackling everything at once. Basically continue to make sure that our product remains a validated by healthcare providers tool, and then branching out. So, with the telehealth expansion, that's taking up a lot of our initiatives right now, making sure that we can get it out there through those pipelines. And then, people will be able to use it on their own if they so desire. But it's kind of like a two-pronged approach, but both of them feed off of healthcare providers being the main lifeline.
Okay, out of curiosity, this is something that I thought, while we were speaking about it, because Mieron itself is an app, right? If you think about it
Yes.
from a software perspective, then it is an app. So what if you just use this app on a mobile devices and then try to recreate the same kind of let's say experience for people who can try it out? Like, is that something that is a possibility, or it is completely out of question?
So for us, it's, that conversation has come up at different times. We really do want to remain committed to being a VR technology. And when you switch over to mobile device, you lose a lot of the functionality that's built into the programming. You lose so much of the immersion and the pattern recognition that we've built into the programs, because when you have your phone, there's still a world of distractions around you. So there are ways that we do have non-VR elements that are part of the VR program. Like, we have homework, we have continuing education materials for providers, we have tips and tricks with how to use Mieron. So whether you're a practitioner using it with your client and you're looking for more inspiration on how to get creative with it, or whether you're using it at home with a loved one and you're kind of starting from scratch and you don't know where to start, we have those like ancillary content tools that are kind of like, they could be packaged up into their own mobile device, or across being different ebooks or different materials that you receive in your inbox. But I would say it would be very difficult to recreate it to be a traditional mobile app, because so much of what we built in is tricking your brain to recognizing patterns and being in that zone where the only thing that you're doing is what you're doing in that moment.
Maybe that it's not very appropriate, but still, I was thinking more in terms of the reachable aspect of people, because so many people around the world have the mobile devices accessible to them compared to the VR gadgets, right? So I was thinking maybe with apps as such can also help people to get the same results. I don't know. I was just curious there.
No, it's a good point, but we'll see so many people. Like, we just had the Abilities Expo. It was our last trade show before everything got shut down. And there's this one guy that came in, he wanted to try it, but he's like, well, and I was telling him, just reach for these targets. And he's like, I don't reach. I'm like, okay, well, they'll come to you. So just keep your elbows where you have it on your wheelchair and they'll come to you eventually. You can move your wrist if you would like. And then all of a sudden he's reaching. And his wife was like, hey, that elbow moved, you're reaching. And you could see he was like, oh, and he brought his elbow back. And so you know, like we were talking about earlier with mindset, people like
Yeah.
make rules for themselves that they think that they have to subscribe to. I don't reach, I can't do this, I can't raise my hand, I can't turn my head this way. And when you put a mobile device in their hand, those rules won't break. When you
Yeah.
put them in VR, those rules don't exist anymore.
People definitely need to have those feeling of actually doing it before they would do it, right? So perhaps
Yeah.
with the mobile devices, it's still difficult to create the same experience. Yeah, I see that point. Okay. So what's the future for Mieron?
So the future for Mieron, we have a lot of exciting development right now. We just became the preferred partner for healthcare solutions with HP for their VR programming. They're releasing a new headset shortly, sometime this year, that's going to have amazing features that are really great for the medical field, for analytics, for capturing data, as relating to how your body is functioning, what it's doing, what your reactions are. So we're developing for that right now. And, you know, we're really excited to be not only a tool that people can have in their homes if their life is completely changed. You know, we're focused on the exercise, we're focused on the functional movement. This week we're releasing our Well in 20 program. So we're constantly evolving and adapting based on our customers' wants and needs. So, you know, next year for Mieron, I think is going to be our most tremendous year yet. We're really looking forward to making a splash with telehealth and making it so that telehealth can be fun, so that patients are engaged, so that they're getting their outcomes from home and not deteriorating. And then we're also really excited about being on this journey now with HP as well, because when you combine the software that we've put all of the years of R&D into and hearing these stories and finding out how it's being used from providers with their amazing hardware, we're so excited for that force to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I was thinking about, let's say that the people who are going to actually consume it, right? So if you think
Mm-hmm.
about, if you think about hospitals or let's say clinic who can actually afford it, it's quite simple. It's quite straightforward. They can use it. But let's say people, you know, who are not able to afford those sort of, you know, gadgets on their own. How do you support those kind of targeted people?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's something that we're constantly looking at here as well. Because, you know, there is a hard cost to the VR headsets and they tend to be pricey for now. You know, I think in the next couple of years that will change, but, you know, hardware is it's not at our discretion. So, you know, you already automatically have a certain price point based on those factors. What we're really trying to do, and this is another thing that with telehealth we're excited about, is create a custom code for virtual reality neurotherapy. If we can get an insurance code for VRNT, then that means we can better track how it's being used, what those outcomes are, if those patients are out of hospitals more frequently, meaning that they're not going in for preventable secondary injuries like pressure sores or broken bones because of their bones being brittle from not doing weight bearing. So we can get a code made, which is something that we've been working on for quite some time, but it's a slow bureaucratic process. Then that will completely change how the everyday person that could benefit from Mieron at home could have access to it.
Yeah, because I can imagine like people like who are in the let's say mid 70s or mid 40s or 50s, who has those kind of injuries and they are not able to add any kind of income in their let's say in their family, then it would be an additional burden for them to actually get something like this, right? So you know, that's where let's say the question is coming from.
Yeah, in a way, because you have to think of it holistically.
Yeah.
Mieron right now so say you purchase the Mieron Go product for home use, that's just about $1,000. That includes the hardware, software, adaptive accessories, training support, online materials, homework. And so you're getting a full setup. Not only that, but a lot of the rehab or activity-based training centers, you'll spend over $1,000 here. I know the healthcare system in Europe is, and I'm sure in Belgium, is much better than what we have here, but you'll spend far over $1,000 in a month, sometimes in a week, to go 3 times a week to rehab here. So if you can make that investment one time, and you get the app updates, and you get the all the newest software features that come out, then you're making a one-time investment monetarily for something that you can continue to use for weeks, months, years. You just have to commit to using it. Just like how if you have a gym membership, you have to commit to going. So instead of necessarily paying out of pocket for a lot of the things that they would, like maybe going to a trainer or having someone coming into their home a couple times a week, they can use Mieron as an ancillary tool where they paid it. And, it is expensive for people to be able to do rehab and recovery, whether they're using new technology or going into this facility that's been there for 50 years. It's unfortunately expensive to get the care that you need to live your healthiest life. But if you can be your healthiest, it'll cost you less in the long term as well.
Yeah. In especially here in Belgium, like we are not, let's say, used to paying those kind of costs, and that's where the question is also perhaps being biased there. And especially in the European region, you'd not hear those kind of let's say costs associated with the medical expenses because of ours.
I'll tell you a personal story. And I lived in Spain for a year, so I've saw a little bit of both sides.
Yeah.
And one time when I was 19 years old here in the States, I was getting my tires changed and I fainted. And because it was just a hot day, I was like standing out in the parking lot waiting for them to change my tires, and I fainted. And I hit my head on the curb, so they called 911. And both of my parents were at work, so no one could pick me up. And the ambulance told me that they had to bring me to the hospital. So ambulance ride, they basically gave me an IV with fluids, went to the hospital, they checked my heart, everything was good, I was free to go. That cost $8,000.
Wow.
And I was under my parents' health insurance at the time. That was an $8,000 bill that came to my parents' house for fainting. I was in Spain and I had like this terrible stomach bug and a cough, and the lady that I lived with was this older woman. And she was like, just go to the doctor. I'll take you. Just go. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go. It's going to be so expensive. She's like, so expensive. What are you talking about? I went to the doctor. It was free. I went to the pharmacy and got medication, and it cost me like 50 cents for some reason for the medication that they gave me. And I was like, I felt like I robbed a bank, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely true, because I have people living in the States, and they come over and they ask me like, what kind of cost that you pay for your insurance and all that. Then I tell them the price, and they're like quite surprised that how we are managing that, and we tell them like what we pay for our taxes and so forth, and how it is distributed here. It's totally different from the US, I guess.
Yeah. So $1,000 for a tool that the software is always getting updated, and you can use it in different ways. And maybe you're still going into rehab, maybe you still have insurance, maybe you don't have insurance coverage. It's really, in the perspective of US healthcare, it's not an expensive, it's expensive, but it's not the most expensive medical cost that you will see, especially something that can help prevent you from going into the hospital from injuries that you can avoid if you're doing the exercises.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I had all the questions that I could throw at you. I want to sort of, thank you for joining this session, especially it's a Monday morning for you perhaps, and it's the end of the day for us. And I want to tell you all the best in this journey. I really hope that, when we talk to each other, perhaps next year, then things will change. The COVID situation will improve.
Yeah.
and then you would have more interest from investors and so forth, that you wish for. Thank you for joining this lesson one
Thank
more
you.
time.
Yeah, this was a really, really great interview. I enjoyed it a lot.